She wasn't born into royalty. She wasn't groomed for a throne. She had no lineage of kings, no armies to command. Just an orphan girl named Hadassah, a Jew in exile, living in a land that was not her own. But in the background, the God who works in silence was setting the stage. She would be called Esther, and her life was about to change the course of history. King Xerxes ruled over 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia. He was powerful, proud, regal, and prone to grand displays. One day, in the middle of an extravagant months-long feast, he summoned Queen Vashti to show off her beauty. She refused. In a moment of defiance, she lost her crown. But heaven wasn't surprised. Her removal wasn't random, it was preparation. A space had opened, and destiny was calling. The most beautiful young women were gathered from every corner of the empire. Among them, Esther. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't forceful, she was quiet, gentle, obedient to Mordecai, her cousin who had raised her as his own. And yet, she stood out. She found favor, not just with people, but with God. When her moment came, she didn't rely on her own ideas. She trusted the advice of those who knew the palace. And when she stood before the king, she didn't beg. She didn't boast. She simply stood with grace. Xerxes was captivated. The crown was placed on her head. Esther had become queen, but no one knew she was a Jew. No one knew she was planted there by divine design. While Esther adjusted to palace life, Mordecai remained at the king's gate. One day, he overheard two guards plotting to assassinate Xerxes. He passed the message to Esther. The plot was exposed, the men were executed, and the event was recorded in the royal chronicles. Mordecai's name was written down, but no reward came, not yet, because God's timing is always perfect. Then came Haman, an Agagite, a descendant of ancient enemies of the Jews, elevated to a position second only to the king. Everyone bowed before him, except Mordecai. He refused, not out of pride, but principle, and for that, Haman was enraged. Haman didn't just want revenge on one man, he wanted annihilation. He cast lots, Purim, to decide the date, and he convinced Xerxes to issue a decree: destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a single day. It was signed, sealed, irrevocable. Grief spread through the Jewish community like fire. But even in mourning, God was moving. Mordecai sent word to Esther, "You must go to the king." Esther hesitated. Anyone who approached the king without being summoned could be executed. But Mordecai's reply pierced through her fear. "Do not think you will escape because you are in the palace. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from another place, but you and your family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther replied, "Go, gather all the Jews and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days. I will do the same, and then I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. If I perish, I perish." In that moment, she stepped into her calling, not with sword or strength, but with surrender and faith. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and approached the throne. The room held its breath. The king looked up and extended the golden scepter. She lived. Esther invited the king and Haman to a private banquet. There, she didn't rush, she waited. She invited them again the next day. God was orchestrating every delay. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He asked for the royal chronicles to be read, and they landed on the moment Mordecai exposed the assassination plot. "What honor has Mordecai received?" Xerxes asked. "Nothing," they said. Just then, Haman entered to request Mordecai's execution. "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" asked Xerxes. Thinking it was himself, Haman suggested a royal parade in the king's robe on the king's horse, led by the king's official. "Excellent," said the king. "Do all that for Mordecai." Haman was humiliated. At the second banquet, the king asked Esther again, "What is your petition? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Esther replied, "Spare my life and the lives of my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed." Xerxes was shocked. Who would dare do such a thing? Esther turned. "The adversary and enemy is this vile Haman." The king stormed out. Haman fell on Esther's couch to beg. The king returned and saw it as an assault. "Will he violate the queen even in my own house?" Haman was taken away and hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Esther was given Haman's estate. Mordecai was elevated to his position, but the original decree to destroy the Jews remained. Esther once again went before the king, this time weeping. "How can I bear to see disaster fall on my people?" So the king allowed a new decree. The Jews could defend themselves. When the day came, they fought back, with courage, with unity, and with the backing of divine providence. Across the empire, the Jews prevailed, not because of power, but because of purpose. They did not touch the plunder. They weren't fighting for gain. They were fighting for survival. Mordecai, once at the gate, now walked the palace halls in royal robes of blue and white. Joy and celebration swept through the land. To remember this great reversal, Mordecai and Esther established a festival, Purim, a day to celebrate when sorrow turned to joy, mourning to dancing, and fear to faith. A day to remember that even when God's name isn't mentioned, He is never absent. Esther wasn't just a queen. She was a vessel, a deliverer, a picture of what it means to be positioned for purpose. She reminds us that we're not here by accident, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, and that sometimes silence is not safety. You might not wear a crown, you might not stand in a palace, but who knows? Maybe you were born for such a time as this.